All right, our next panel is Strategies for Engaging Faculty in Designing Well-Being in the Classroom, and our moderator is Nikki Brower, Director of Health Promotion and Wellness at Illinois State University.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Well, thank you very much for being here and for continuing the conversation around well-being. I would like to first introduce our panelists, and so I'm going to start on the end. This is Kathleen Hatch. She's the Executive Director of Recreational Sports at Ohio State University and Principal Consultant with Strategic Healthy Impacts. Welcome. Next to her is Marguerite O'Brien. Marguerite is the Director of Wellness, Prevention, and Advocacy Services at University of South Carolina. Welcome. And just joining us today, early this morning, I invited,
not on the panel.
Yes. Talked to Sarah this morning when she was too tired to say no. And so I have with us Dr. Sarah Oswalt. She's the professor and the department chair of the Department of Kinesiology, Health, and Nutrition at University of Texas at San Antonio. And then next to me is Dr. Nance Lucas, Executive Director, Center for the Advancement of Wellbeing, and Associate Professor in the School of Integrative Studies at George Mason University. And I'll go ahead and let you all just tell a little bit about yourselves. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, first let me start by saying I didn't take it personally this morning when the question was raised whether centers for well-being were a hindrance or an asset to this agenda, so coming from a center. Just this little joke. Our center broadly, let me just tell you what the mission of it is we serve as a catalyst for human well-being, and we take the word catalyst very seriously into heart. So, my goal is to kind of get myself out of this job. And what I mean by that is to provide resources and consultation across institutions so everyone can own well-being in their context, whether it's in the classroom or outside the classroom. So that's a little bit about our center. By background, I'm a leadership studies scholar, and that's in my teaching, and my passion is really at the intersection of the science of well-being and leadership. I've been at George Mason University for 14 years.
Hi, my name's Sarah Oswalt. I am a professor and department chair at the University of Texas San Antonio, and I actually am been a member of ACHA since 1995. I was originally a college health educator and made the transition to faculty about 14 years ago. So I've been in your shoes, and I'm now on the dark side. Yes, I went. But we can talk about how we can work together, and that's what today's session is, and I look forward to talking with you all about that.
Hey, good afternoon. So Marguerite O'Brien, University of South Carolina, and I sit on a team, we're very robust. We have a very robust health promotion and prevention team led by Dr. Rebecca Caldwell, who's our Director of Strategic Health Initiatives. And so I oversee all the primary prevention folks, including co-partner with Rebecca on things like mental health, but sexual health, general wellness, dietitians, faculty and staff wellness, and sexual assault, violence intervention, and prevention. And our dream, our vision is of a healthy Carolina where students, faculty, and staff can live, work, play, and thrive in a community that makes it easy to do that. So that's our mission. That's what we try to do, and we are encouraged every time we're able to partner with faculty, and looking forward to hearing more ideas about how we can do that a little bit more intentionally and robustly.
Hi, everyone. Kathleen Hatch. I'm new to the Buckeye family, so just this summer was talked out of doing some other work to come back to a campus role, and Canadian, so I may have some good vowels to share in the next hour with some of you. But was thrilled to hear the Okanagan Charter mentioned a couple of times this morning, and have done some consulting with some campuses in healthy campus initiatives the last couple of years, and helped facilitate the Thought Leadership Summit last fall at the University of Miami with ACHA and NASPA and NERSA. So this is near and dear to my heart, and just thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you all. We're very excited you're here. I want you all to know that I have given them full charge to go off script. And so if at any time they want to keep going about making a conversation a little bit broader around one of the questions, I've gone ahead and asked them to do that just so we could get the full breadth of everything that they have to share. So some of the common threads today have been about well-being as a shared responsibility and how it's really extending to a community focus of students, staff, and faculty. And so that's very exciting, I think, to all of us. And so the first thing I want to ask the group is, we've been speaking about changing the culture. And so I want to know from all your perspectives, what does this mean to you all? And what shifts can be made to include the well-being agenda?
We have 2 days for this question?
We do. We do.
I'll start. And even though I think that this is absolutely amazing that we're here, and I'm equally reminded of the voices that may not. And given that this is also a focus intended to be on the academy and with faculty, I'm hoping that as we think about sort of next steps, and both from an urgent perspective, but also one of some realism, and knowing that it hasn't been necessarily easy or quick for us to get to this moment. So as we truly marry and blur efforts with the academy, how can we be patient? How can we inspire young faculty? How can we look at innovations in ways that still are really realistic, and looking at the expertise, the deep inquiry and expertise that's available on all of our campuses, and to harness that talent in some balance with us practically, and as where we can take theory and practice and tighten that with great intentions.
So for me, my perspective that I bring is a systems perspective and a person and environment perspective. So thinking about where people fit within the system and helping to create systems and environments that help people to manage or work on their wellness or feel like they can. And then how do we marry that with our faculty? I think there's lots of different ways, and like I said earlier, I think we need to be more intentional about it and work with faculty, like getting not only junior faculty, any faculty interested with and excited about, or get us excited about working with them, partnering on research that they're doing. There's plenty of faculty doing this awesome research about things related to health and well-being. We just aren't talking to each other. So how do we talk to each other? How do we help them? How do we bring resources to bear or information to bear without violating policies like HIPAA about getting them in touch with students who might be interested in interventions that they're working on? And then likewise, how are we providing that culture on our campus that helps us all thrive, like I said earlier, like especially for any of our, and I know you can probably talk about this, but for our faculty who are on a tenure track, they're hyper-focused and probably way too stressed to even, sometimes even attend to a student's needs. Like, I've got all these other things going on, right? So how do we help them take care of their own well-being and their own needs and help them realize that we are partners in this? So it's not, it's not the faculty side and the student affairs side, that we all are here for the same reasons, and those don't only include supporting our students, it includes supporting each other. One thing that we know from our National College Health Association data at USC is that our students, we ask the extra question about, does the well-being of faculty and staff affect your ability to be successful as a student? And 87% of our students say yes. That's huge. We use that data point all the time to help our, to make sure that's okay, and it has been for a very long time, to have a faculty staff wellness program because it makes sense, but also to let our faculty and staff know, like, our students are watching us. They're noticing our behavior. Some folks talked about it earlier, like, are assignments due at midnight? Or even if assignments are due at 8 in the morning, which is making me reconsider because I teach the first year seminar, so I'm encouraging a student to be up at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning working on a paper. Okay, I need to reestablish what time my assignments are due.
So I think I would, echo a lot of the comments that I'm hearing as far as how do we look at it as a systems approach and how do we look at faculty needs. Faculty, depending on your institution, have different responsibilities and priorities, and they I don't want to say are misaligned with the student initiative, but to some extent they are, especially if you're at a research-intensive or R1 institution. How they keep their job is unfortunately not related to student success or the teaching. And that's really hard. I know I was a student affairs person for years, and it's really hard when I went into the classroom. I was like, what do you mean I can't do the stuff that I care about and I'm passionate about? And I was actually told in my third year review, you have to stop this. I was told that as a faculty member. That's really hard to hear if you're passionate about something. And most of the people really are that kind of narrow vision. And so I did. I put that stuff away for a little bit and focused on getting tenure. And now I'm able to make some of those changes. But I can also speak the language and help our faculty understand how to integrate, and hopefully help you all work better to integrate with faculty in ways that can make both parties and that partnership successful. So looking at what are the expectations and roles and responsibilities on your campuses, and looking at that systems approach is really going to be critical in order to move that dial for campus change. I would also like to say, from an administrator perspective, retention and enrollment numbers are going to be something that you can at least speak to as the department chair. Now that I've been tasked with retention and enrollment, I hear that, and I'm going to be able to have that message be something that I can relate to my faculty as we're being charged as faculty for retention and efforts and enrollment and recruitment efforts, that you can help us with that aspect. That's going to be a beneficial partnership as well. So just some of my thoughts on how we can look at that change issue, and what we can actually do to move the dial and the dialogue, because it is all part of the academy. And while student support and success is important, from that individual's faculty member's perspective, it may not be as important as we'd like.
As a former dean, I feel your pain, because all of us academic deans were encouraged by the provost to give you that very message, right? Which is so counter, to everything that we're talking about today. And I really resonate too with the systems approach, because when we talk about changing a culture of a university, especially a large university, an R1 university, it's really daunting and it's overwhelming, and it's almost like you don't even want to try. And so I like to really think about what we're doing is, we're creating conditions wherever we can within a university, where well-being, inclusion, and human flourishing can be uplifted. And I think that's really what we're working to do. And I think, ultimately, the ideal, the dream really would be to include well-being as a new metric, of how we define a successful college education versus, our traditional ones, which is, retention rates, rate of graduation, average income of our graduates, and so forth. But if we're really talking about all the themes we uncovered this morning, and what our ideals are, I think this really provides an opportunity for us to, collectively work together, and all the national higher education associations to kind of think about this, in a more broader and deeper way. So it's around culture change, yes, but I think it's really around just creating those conditions wherever it can live and exist, and allow it to kind of, like leading a social movement, allow it to kind of grow like the snowball effect. So because at the end of the day, what we're really, I think, hoping to achieve is that, our students leave our institutions, and for them individually, they know what a purpose-filled life looks like for them, and they have the tools to live a purpose-filled life.
I want to just add to that too, because if we are, we're talking about this data, and just a little conversation at lunch too, and what will be the impetus to truly move towards establishing and recognizing high impact practices of well-being? Is NESI, a place to pivot and to move with? How can we inspire, emerging and promising practice that must be inherent in our work in order to recalibrate, and where we've taken a dominant view of harm reduction for decades, can that be parked as the small subset to something much larger and much more impactful, and what will it take, to do those proportionally, where we don't lose an urgent eye, but we run hard in space that I think we're all saying we must be in.
Thank you. Moving on. From your experiences, what do our colleagues that hold faculty roles really understand about well-being? And you could speak to the well-being of students, self-practice. Do we see ourselves as role models for students?
So I'm in the Department of Kinesiology, Health, and Nutrition, and one might think that in that department, so it's kinesiology, including exercise science, athletic training, kines PE teaching training, health, community and public health, and then dietetics program. And one might think in that department there would be a good understanding of role modeling and self-care and practices, but there's not. And I wonder, as I talk to my colleagues across the campus and their understanding of well-being, and I think we have maybe ways that we know, we should be taking care of ourselves as faculty, but I don't see it necessarily in practice. So I think the role modeling is certainly an area for improvement, but I also think there's that understanding of faculty, much like our students, right, are balancing multiple responsibilities and challenges. One of the discussions this morning was how our students are not only students, right, but they're parents, and they're working part-time and full-time. And when you think of faculty, they're working their job, but they're also possibly parents with, relationships and all of that, that they're trying to balance. And so my sense is, in general, maybe not the best sense of well-being for themselves.
Yeah. I'd like to add to that. I would say it's that, and more broadly, I think faculty understand, in a cognitive way, cerebral way, that well-being is a interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, whatever these words are today, field. And I believe, and I'm trying not to be biased about this, but I do believe that every discipline and every field in academia has important questions to explore and research around well-being. So the usual suspects are, the psychology faculty and the philosophy faculty and so forth, but it's also the, econ department, it's public policy, it's the School of Business, it's nursing. I mean, the English, the range is very wide. And, on a practical level, what our center did, it was probably about 8 years ago, before the university formalized our well-being initiative, we actually did two things. Well, we led with the science, and we said, to faculty, we're going to provide a small pot of money to apply to mini research grants that support our understanding of well-being. And it was amazing to see faculty coming out of the woodworks for, a very small amount of money, because they don't get a lot of institutional resources for their research. It's rewarded externally, typically. And the other thing we did was curriculum transformation projects. So again, we gave faculty who were interested a very small stipend, and we created learning communities of faculty around even adding a module into an existing course where they can address well-being from their particular discipline. And so those are just, I think, some of the examples. That what I hope we don't do is I hope we don't get to a place where we say, okay, faculty, because I get this every semester, a week before we start classes, put this statement about well-being on your syllabus. I hope we don't go in that direction.
I'm not going to pretend to be able to tell you what a typical faculty member is thinking about or understands about well-being, because I don't know. I'm not a typical faculty member. I'm not a faculty member at all. Well, I'm an instructor of University 101. But there is a couple of things struck me as I was listening, and what the question is, you all might hear this. We hear this sometimes from students when we're talking to them about some of their risky behaviors, whether that's alcohol use or smoking or anything. Well, no, like this is just now, like while I'm in college. Once I get out of college, I won't drink so much, or I'll quit smoking, or I won't pull all-nighters. You're put in the rut in the road, right? You're developing these habits now. magically, when you graduate, those habits aren't going to fall away like when you throw up your graduation cap, right? So, but we also, as faculty, are we also saying, as faculty and staff, oh, when I just get through this, we've got this grant to put in, I've got this major report that I have to go in. When that's done, then I'll be able to focus on this and this and this. We all do it. I don't know why we put off happiness or well-being or whatever you want to talk about, because, the only moment we have is this moment, right? This now moment. So what are some things that we can do, or that some of the things that we do at the University of South Carolina is in terms of training, which you might not have said, but it's on the list of questions, so part of that same question, is we provide training. We have what we call mental health liaisons among faculty and staff who get trained in our suicide gatekeeper prevention training. We also help them, equip them, what are the tools and what resources exist on and off campus for students who might be struggling. How do you recognize those warning signs and symptoms? We also do training with our sexual assault, violence intervention and prevention area, the same thing. How do you report? How do you respond to a student who tells you about something that's happened to them, stalking, harassment, sexual assault? How do we talk to them? How do we come at that from a trauma-informed framework? And then how do we report? Because as faculty or staff, they're mandated reporters. How do we do that and help explain that it's not as scary as it sounds, right? The cavalry's not rushing in, the police sirens aren't blaring, coming to that student's room or classroom. So we do that training all over our campus, and to get those allies and people that understand and that can help our students get to resources and themselves. We also talk about, here are the resources available to you as faculty and staff on this campus for those things. We do health communications campaigns every semester, and a few semesters ago it was Mental Health Matters at the University of South Carolina, and so it's social media campaigns. It's student-driven in terms of what the messages are and what they want the hashtag to be and all that kind of stuff. And so with that campaign specifically, we also provided a curriculum guide for our university one-on-one instructors especially, and others, to be able to use in their classrooms to have conversations about mental health, to help reduce that stigma. So those are things we're doing. A few of you this morning talked about, which I really appreciated, having that mindful minute or just taking a moment before class to just breathe or meditate or whatever. And I can't believe it's taken me this long. I've taught our first year seminar for 10 years, and this is my first year where I'm doing it the very beginning of class, because I teach meditation and practice that in my life outside of my job. That we spend a few minutes meditating before class. And students, it's their favorite part. Mm-hmm. And we had a presentation. We have outside speakers come in sometimes, and we'll tell the speaker, hey, we have a couple things to do, and they're fine with it. We had to go to a location the other day, and so like afterwards I gathered with my class. I was like, I'm sorry, we didn't have time to do our meditation. They were really bummed. I mean, they were looking forward to it. Now, are they doing it outside of our class? I hope so, but maybe not. But at least they have those 5 minutes before their one-on-one class twice a week that they're stopping so they can focus on whatever's happening in front of them. So.
I know those are all great examples, and even, where a faculty might not feel equipped, even just to do something that simple. I think to start with some campus resources and then to have it ripple. I was reminded, as you were sharing that, of a colleague at the University of Toronto, and they have a Let's Move program where it literally started with the 90-minute to 3-hour lectures on campus, where a quick little move break came in, and faculty actually initially, I think most of them, saw it as their break time. But over time, I think they enjoyed the 10 minutes up and down a stair or whatever it was that reset learning for the back half. So faculty then were quickly the champion for this reset, let's move moment, because their learning changed and how they felt about what they were teaching was dramatically different. So I do think that there's sometimes some low-hanging, very available fruit that we can lose sight on when we're looking for something, when we're looking for the panacea to change the whole system. We've still got to use some of the small things where we can.
Okay, so I want to just let you all know that when I asked this question, I asked them, do we think our faculty see themselves as role models to the students? And I'll include staff in that as well. And so I'm the previous past chairperson for the Faculty Staff Health and Wellness Coalition through American College Health Association, and a subcommittee of our coalition created a national assessment tool, the National Faculty Staff Health Assessment. And so I want to speak to what Marguerite said earlier, and I'm also going to give a shout out to Michelle Burson, because a long, long time ago, it seems, we talked about the importance of tying that role to our employees, and then to see if our students also felt like staff and faculty's health and well-being actually impacted their student success and learning. And so in that new National Faculty Staff Health Assessment, there are 3 questions that sort of allude to well-being. So I want to point that out to you all in case you want to use that tool. It is available now. And one of those questions, and this is coming from our perspective as staff and faculty, is my college and university cares about my health and well-being. That's a question. Do you believe the health and well-being of university staff and faculty impact student success and learning? And I'm looking at our reference group data report right now, and 93% of folks that answered that question said yes. And then the third question is, how important do you feel it is to model positive health and wellness behaviors to students? Now those numbers go down a little bit, Sarah, but they're not bad, right? So 31% thought it was extremely important, 43% very important, and about 19% moderately important. So we're kind of there. I think we know, but maybe we need to just broaden the conversation a little bit. So I like where this is going. And it kind of opens the door for my next question, which Nance provided earlier. How do we make the tent bigger to meaningfully engage faculty in the building of the agenda around well-being? And so how do we make that tent bigger? And then perhaps, you know, some barriers or challenges we might face in that process. So I'll turn it back over to you all.
Well, I'll start with just a little story of a firestorm that may be coming at Mason this fall, in this academic year, actually. So we know, because we're such a large university and we're a distributed university, that we need to find ways to make these resources around students' learning and engagement with well-being and inclusion more accessible. And, you know, and our president is very, committed to that. Our provost is committed to that. And so in our president's goals this year, he has one of his goals, among many, is a required academic course for students on well-being and inclusion. Well, that appears somewhat, kind of an innocent kind of goal to pursue, and a laudable goal to pursue. Well, at the first Faculty Senate meeting this fall, it imploded. It was a huge explosion, a very good intention imploded. Because, the faculty feel like, okay, here's the West Wing, dictating what we're going to be teaching, which is not the intention, whatsoever. But I share this story because I think there's this emotional kind of response from faculty and a visceral response around this. But then I also see so many faculty who do want to be meaningfully engaged in this agenda. And I think actually when the dust settles, I think we're going to land at a very strong place with this particular goal. And so I say that because when we start to talk about this with faculty in terms of putting on their own oxygen masks first, okay, which we talked about, and the same with staff for all the reasons we mentioned. But then when you start to really get down to then kind of their discipline in fields, like I mentioned earlier, that's a way really to meaningfully involve them. If we start talking about well-being in the general education, curriculum, that's a very meaningful way. Anything that we're doing with our centers for teaching and faculty excellence, that's a meaningful way to really involve, faculty, how to give them some common language and understanding, how to give them some tools that they can put into their classroom just to do, a couple of minutes of, centering with the students. I think those are really meaningful ways to do that.
Well, and I would echo what you mentioned earlier, which is connecting to what their job responsibilities and priorities are. While external funding may be predominant, internal funding is still very valued, even if it's small pots of money that they might be able to use in ways that could be considered pilot data or brain start other initiatives. So, those projects that you talked about with both the curriculum and the grant, I think are grants, the mini grants, are definitely ways that you're going to increase that excitement, because we've tied it to the other purposes that they have at the institution. If they didn't have the general interest in well-being before, you may now have sparked that in them, right? And so that's kind of the beauty of that approach. You've taken what they have to do already and maybe created some other lines. So I think that that's something. I was so excited to think about your ideas. So I think that that's some of the things that I think are really important. When it comes to other ways to integrate that, looking at, again, I think their roles and responsibilities. I always encourage, when I talk to college health professionals, is to find those who have an intrinsic passion in this area already. It may not be in the health promotion department or the nursing school. It may be that chemistry professor who has their own side interest in whatever health topic. And how do you reach out and find those faculty who could be your spokesperson in that department or in that college, can be your ally on your committees? Looking for the people who have that interest already is going to be a lot easier than thinking that there's natural pathways perhaps within existing areas that may not be there. So those are the two things that I would really recommend.
Agree with all that. I think, too, that we've been talking about the connecting with research that faculty are doing, which is wonderful, and also think about, instead of only always going to the faculty and saying, hey, what you're working on, we might be able to help, or what grants are you looking to pursue? Because we've done that as well. We're looking at a certain grant, maybe about physical activity or nutrition or a combination, or having to do with sexual health and STI prevention, and then talking to those faculty and saying, hey, we're looking into this, would you be interested in collaborating with us on this? And they might say, well, you know what, actually, we're writing a grant too, let's put our heads together. So to reach out to them in that way too, so that they know that we are also pursuing grant money, or trying to work on a research project as well, because they really want to help. My experience has been that faculty do want to help if it's something that they're also interested in. I like the idea of going to someone who might not come immediately to mind. And one way, well, how do I find that chemistry professor or that professor of English that might have a passion for this? Connect with your faculty senate too. There chances are there's a health and well-being committee or a wellness committee or something like that. So try and connect with those people to find out, because those are folks that are likely very interested in health and well-being issues, or at least would connect you with, oh, here's these other faculty that are doing some research in areas that you all might be able to connect.
Yeah, no, all good points. I was just reminded of Mark, I think Doris, at the the strategies NASPA meeting, and talking about, and he was using the Okanagan Charter as a way to make sure intentionally that the three stools that are often institutionally pitted for resources of, a sustainability and environmental initiative and a healthy initiative, or, the inclusion voices that can end up, almost at odds over resource allocation, or whose initiative is more important, or what scorecard looks fancier. And how do we create one? How do we make that tent, put enough air into the tent, Nikki, that you're describing, that we find ourselves all there to asset map in a way, and whether it's looking at a collective impact model or whatever the way that germane to your setting, that those, assets of the faculty see themselves truly as contributing to this space and not sitting waiting for their turn of institutional interest. I think then we all win.
So I'm wondering if we can just dial down just a little bit, if you all have programmatic solutions you've been implementing, or you've been seeing in this area. I think the folks would like to hear that as well. We might have touched on a few, but do you have anything? I
touched on a couple in terms of our campaign, so with our Mental Health Matters partnering with them. Like I said, we do a health communications campaign every semester, but not every semester does that include sort of like a curriculum guide or a faculty guide or anything like that. We also did, this was sort of in some ways talking about providing resources and things. When our campus went fully tobacco-free a few years ago, we talked about, we had a tobacco-free task force that included faculty, staff, students, other constituents. But we also then created, through our office, Healthy Carolina, to create like a toolbox, like how, because enforcement, if you will, of the new policy was everybody's responsibility, right? A lot of people just wanted the police to do it. Like, no, the police have way more other things to do than that. We're saying, no, it's all of our responsibility as citizens of this campus community to let someone know, hey, we have a new policy, yada, yada. And so we created a toolkit of little cards that people can carry to hand to someone to help them get the resources they might need to manage their cravings while on campus if they were not planning to quit, or if they wanted to quit, here's all the resources for that. We included a great video with one of our campus leaders at the time. So, I mean, there's sort of easy ways to help provide that sort of information, because I think sometimes what I hear from some faculty when we go out and do trainings, I'll do the trainings on how to report sexual violence and relationship violence, is like they're like, thank you so much, because we didn't know. We really didn't know how to support our students or how to get support for ourselves or the kinds of resources you offer. And it's not that, when we go through new employee orientation or faculty go through faculty orientation, just like our students, they're given a boatload of information in a very short amount of time. We can't expect people to digest all of it and remember it all the time. So for us, it's incumbent upon us to get out as well, to get out to our faculty, to try and make inroads into the faculty senate and just at least find an ally, because chances are high, we're not going to be able to go present at faculty senate necessarily, but if we find allies or work with their health and wellness committee, to let them know that we have resources. And we have found very often that they're like, oh, can you come to my department then? Come to our meeting and share some information. We also have a wellness ambassador program on our campus, like many of you, I'm sure you do have, with our faculty staff wellness program. And so we're recruiting, we've been recruiting faculty to be wellness ambassadors as well. So they become champions for health and well-being initiatives through our Gamecocks Live Well program. So that's not just staff members only, so that it's seen as, oh, it's a staff thing, it's not for faculty. It is as well, and they become those champions, and then we can connect them in other ways to different programs that we're doing.
I just wanted to build off of the consistent messaging, and had the privilege to meet Kathleen Hatch, who is the registrar at Ryerson University, and she was a part of a presentation at Caucus. And she's also serving as the president of ARUC, the Registrars Association Universities in Canada. And she told this fascinating story of how when they really did a deep dive, and no one probably creates the potential for more stress than the registrar's office for students. You come in or you leave with nothing, all based on what might happen right there. And she was talking about the profession changing from transactional and really into a relational movement. But they had the opportunity on campus to look at letters being sent to students who were in non-compliance with fees. And she said it was absolutely fascinating to look at, back to what are the true consistent messages. So do you think beating a student over the head about their late fees is going to work or cause less stress? It's not like a student probably is really happy to be in arrears. So how humanely might that communication be received, and maybe even change the trajectory of payments? So it really, when we think about all the environmental cracks that we could potentially go in and partner with, that really might change. But if the commitment is to, at a mission and core purpose level, we will be, then those are germane to all of our work, to see if we can, in fact, have a slight shift, but a profound impact on the audience that it's intended for.
So I have one more, and then we've got one from the audience as well. So I think this kind of goes in line with our conversation, but how do we balance the shift of well-being and then still maintain the rigor of the classroom? Because I'm pretty sure that's a question that's going to come up, right? Okay.
Well, I think it's a little bit of a simple answer, which is to lead with the science. And so we talked earlier about this too, that there's so much excellent research that really supports, the practices of well-being. And so in the classroom, obviously it's to bridge and help students make the connections with all the great science. It's neuroscience, and it's out of many domains, with practices and applications. And there's so many great opportunities, to be able to do that. So I think I think there's so much. It's hard to actually get at all the science in one academic course around this work.
So I interpreted the question a little bit differently about how faculty may say, I don't have time for the 5 minutes, I have my syllabus and I must follow my syllabus and I don't have any leeway to do anything else in my syllabus. And so I think one of the things that we can think about are these small low-hanging fruit that you all had mentioned that I think are relatively easy ways to not adjust the classroom environment so completely and dramatically that you're losing what the faculty member wants to accomplish. And it still incorporates kind of that idea of the well-being overall in that general kind of sense. I also think that some of the things that y'all heard earlier today, right, as far as when things are due, when you respond to emails. I had a conversation on the bus ride here about how I, even myself, was, I work a lot at night. I know, it's horrible, right, the role modeling. And I find myself emailing, I was emailing my faculty on the weekends, and then I would get responses. And I had a colleague who works in corporate, and he says, you got to stop emailing your faculty on the weekends, because when I stopped doing that, the people I report to me stopped emailing me back. And I was like, oh, because now I'm emailing them. They think they have to email me back on the weekend. What kind of culture am I creating, right? So I still work on weekends, but what I do is I set it so that my email's delayed, so it doesn't go out till 6 a.m. on Monday morning. So at least, even though I need to get my stuff done, and maybe that's still not healthy, and I know all that, but at least I'm not requiring them to feel obligated to respond to me because I sent an email out. And so that's maybe not directly what you're talking about, but I think we do the same thing with students, right? I do the same thing now with students, because with the students, they also expect a response immediately. If I respond at 10 o'clock at night, then they want to IM me through email, and I'm not going to do that. So I'll do the same thing, but we need to look at how we are, when it comes to faculty relationships, creating that culture, both within amongst ourselves, but also within the students, and looking at the variety of ways and little strategies that we can use, I think are helpful. I also think that one thing that's really important for faculty to understand is how do we incorporate well-being into our classroom policies. As department chair, I review syllabi from all across the country when they're doing course substitutions. And some of the language about you missed the test, you missed a class, it does not matter what the excuse is, what the reason is, no credit. And we got to kind of look at some of that a little bit, right? I mean, there has to be policies in place in our syllabus, but we have to be human. And faculty, as a faculty member for a very long time, I know I started out that way because I thought I had to be. I had to be really, really strict because I didn't want to be seen as an easy professor. I didn't want students to take advantage of me. But we have to help our faculty understand how to walk that line between the academic rigor and helping the students learn the material and allowing for well-being to be part of that classroom environment.
Really have a whole lot to offer here other than, using that sort of, we talked about that low-hanging fruit, like providing faculty with the resources that they might need that could be helpful in a way that's easy to digest. So we're not asking you to take 20 minutes out of your classroom instruction time, but here are, do you need a PowerPoint slide? Do you need this resource? Do you need these web links? I mean, get them to your students. In University 101, as an instructor there, we get a lot of information and support from that office. We get a weekly email with here's things for you to know, here's things for your students might want to know about opportunities for them. And I don't know if that happens for our faculty. And, it's sort of like when we have, with our first year students, we sort of help support them maybe a little bit more than a second or third or fourth year student or beyond, in terms of being a little bit more mindful of reminding them of things perhaps. But I think it might be helpful, again, working with our faculty senate, do the departments have their weekly or monthly newsletter that goes out that the faculty actually read, because there's plenty of newsletters that go out. We get them too, you know, that was like, I don't have time to read this. But that would give, here's the key information, or here's the resources just in one place about mental health or stress management, or about students who might be food insecure, or about how to access health services, and what about insurance or whatever. So they kind of have it, they can put it in their email folder, file folder, and then pull it up if a student asks them about, like, I don't know how to do this. Wait, I've got that somewhere. And they could pull it up so they're not having to spend classroom time explaining it all, but they know where the resource is.
Yeah, and I think we were certainly inspired at lunch to think about that big common goal. You know, can we find our voices and our partners on campus that will transcend, you know, from the individual to sort of others' well-being. And, you know, I think for me, even a really good practical but transformative effort that's taking place with faculty is the community engagement efforts. And even if it's as simple as, you know, improving self-efficacy and a sense of belonging at a time of such disconnect, that those are cornerstones that, and there are amazing faculty doing incredible work that just need their work amplified, you know, and if we are even a part of the spirit of that, then back to where's our bridge on a campus? And if I can highlight a cool faculty's work, then that's a touchdown for all of us. So how do we do that?
Thank you all. And I believe we have a question from the audience, right?
Yep. So from the internet, what are some ways that we can reimagine the tenure process to prioritize and reward faculty and student well-being?
I have lots of ideas, but
Please go.
Well, no, I totally have many ideas, but I don't know. They're not going to work on my campus. I've already brought them up. Maybe they'll work on your campus. I would really love to see tenure and promotion be revisited as having one of the three pillars. So for most faculty, you have to do research, teaching, and service. And those are kind of the triad for a faculty member. And the proportion of those are going to vary depending on your institution. Where I'm at, it's a 40%, 40-40-20, 40% research, 40% teaching, 20% service. I would love to re-envision that there can be at all levels of types of institutions, faculty who could have a 60% service commitment and 2020 and still get tenure. That would be phenomenal. I've advocated on our campus, can we have somebody who is 60% teaching and 20% research and 20% service and still get tenure? And it's not happening now. We have some new leadership, maybe we'll see. But the reality is it's not there. I think that would be an awesome way if we could re-envision, and there are some schools that have professors of practice who can get tenure. That's just not happening at my school. So your institution may have that. I would definitely tap into that. But I think the well-being concept could be integrated both into the teaching and service areas of faculty. And it can also be integrated into the well-being, as we've talked about. Mm-hmm. It may just be a little bit more challenging for them to do, but I think that we could definitely re-envision promotion and tenure if there was leadership and interest in doing that.
Yeah, I love that idea, and that would, if that occurs in our lifetime, that would be a major win. And but I think I completely agree with that. One thing I would also add, I think some of this is also around from a well-being lens. You know, how can we change some of our existing policies and practices? You know, like tenure and promotion, but also within that, how we evaluate instruction. And so, you know, as instructors across the board, we have on our traditional university Scantron evaluations, about, I don't know, probably 40 questions, too many. And then there's two macro questions, which is, rate the overall course itself and rate the overall instructor. But what if we also just added one little question like rate overall how this course impacted your well-being, or something like that, or somewhere that we're also embedding something around, like you gave me this idea when you were talking about the question earlier, do you believe the health and well-being of faculty and staff impacts student learning and success? And I think so. But then why don't we put that on how we evaluate instructors. Then I think we'll see a lot more faculty interested in that,
Yes, I
right?
would agree. If it's on the course evaluation, it's part of their promotion tenure, we will definitely see a change.
Yes, I'll add that to your dream.
I guess the one thing that I was just thinking about too, as a bit of a practical voice to this, and is how could we ultimately capture success back to that process that's seen very linear and in a compartment all in and of itself. If we were to somehow try to look at that, the sense of that graduate, that bend the arc of the impact to not this quick little ROI, but a VOI. So what would be the ways that we could look out further? And if in fact we've just heard from a president at lunch that this is our core business, then it must be an element within the tenure conversation at a minimum, and ultimately the governance contextual to the size and shape of the institution. So we've got to think about it both in the immediacy of the economic engine, but in the value proposition of something that is over time.
Mm-hmm. I thought, too, a thought came to me, it went, but it came back, is to, from the systems level perspective as well, looking at our policies, too. So what are our policies around things like flex time? Especially, at least I find on my campus, there are different policies for faculty than there are for staff. So there might be some more generous policies for faculty than there are for staff. But so how do we make those equitable as well, so that we have opportunities for people to work flex time or maybe telecommute on different, when it makes sense, and things of that nature, so people feel like they can take care of their well-being, their needs or their well-being, or even getting time, flex time to take an exercise class or go meditate for 20 minutes, so that but that's not your lunch, you know what I mean? Like, you can have lunch and then you can do these other things. So those are, you haven't gone over it so well yet, but we keep pushing ahead for those things as well.
I just wanted to share one thing with y'all in case you are interested. At Illinois State, we actually take that question that we added to the National Faculty Staff Health Assessment about faculty and staff's overall well-being impacting student success. We actually ask that when our students come in and they take our Alcohol Wise course. Before they get there, we ask them if they think that the health and well-being of faculty and staff is going to impact their student success and learning, and it's very high in the 90th percentile that they do believe that. So I think there's something to our conversation, and we keep talking about metrics, and I think that we have a few of them floating around, right? Mm-hmm. So we've heard a lot of good things today, right? As we move forward and we make the tent bigger, right? I've heard Kathleen say, let's be patient, right? Building relationships, and then understanding, looking at policies, and reevaluating instruction. Is there anything you all would like to add? And are there any questions? Okay, just want to make sure.
I guess I would like to, Kathleen's point related to the longer trajectory of the issue, I think is a really critical one. And I think it's one that merits a lot of exploration and time and consideration. And I look forward to those venues to happen. So I've been a department chair for a year now, and I will tell you that the focus on money and enrollment and retention seems to dominate. And I hate to say that, but I'm going to be blunt. I know it's being televised or webinar, but whatever. Because I think it's an important aspect that how do we get this message in this context of all these other issues to have equal voice? And I don't know the answer to that, but I look forward to the dialogues when we can get it so that we're not just talking about enrollment and tuition dollars. We're talking about really what we need to be talking about.
I would just add, just even a little bit more broadly, this around the well-being agenda in higher education, just the importance of integration and having an integrated, coherent agenda at our universities and colleges around, this issue. I think it's a really powerful opportunity for a partnership and a union between academic and student affairs. It's probably one of the best. Again, I'm trying not to be biased, but I also think we should, well, let me say it this way. I think there's an opportunity for us writ large in higher education to look at this well-being agenda with a very open, generous, generative approach. And what I mean by that is, sometimes I think when there are innovative initiatives like well-being, I think there is a rush to be the first X, Y, and Z, and or to kind of someone holding the secret sauce, that's somehow going to get them, higher up in the rankings. And I think well-being, as we've been talking about human flourishing, has a much higher moral kind of commitment to it that's less transactional and more transformative. And so I hope as we move together on this agenda in higher education that we can do it with the most generous spirit, that we can make ourselves open and vulnerable for sharing our best practices and our not so great practices and our lessons learned, and how can we more broadly support one another in this agenda versus kind of, a more competitive kind of spirit. And I think when we do that in parallel, then I think we have greater chances of really impacting all of our students who go through our universities.
Well said. Does anybody else have questions from the audience here? We're at time. Okay, then. Sorry. Thank you so much, and thank you all.
It was fun. I love your ideas.
Oh, I'd love to see